Welcome. Good day to all on the line, and thank you for taking time to join us today for this webcast, where we'll be looking at the Datazen Product Set for on-premise mobile reporting. It's a short session, and we'll have a lot to fit in, so please raise any questions on the chat session, and we'll respond as soon as we can, if not during the presentation itself. My name is Paul Balacky. I've been at Thorogood since '91, and I'm a principal consultant. So today's objectives, we'll look to explore the capabilities of Datazen. We're looking to see how the product allows companies to produce and distribute information dashboards for consumption on mobile devices. I'll give an overview of the Datazen architecture, looking at the server and publisher tools and the delivery via mobile devices. In our case, we'll be I'll hopefully be presenting on a Windows phone and an iPad. Okay. So in terms of agenda, it's a very short session, but we've got introduction, which is what I'm going through now. I'll then go into sort of demonstrating the product and building a dashboard, extending a set of dashboards that are already in place. Touch wood, that all works okay. And then I'll briefly look at the Datazen architecture, and then we'll conclude and wrap up. Good. Okay, so who are we? Thorogood is an independent professional services firm. We specialise in business intelligence and analytics solutions, and have been doing over for the last 28 years. We work with customers across insurance, banking, consumer goods, pharma, healthcare sectors is where we've predominantly worked, leveraging our teams from the US, UK and Indian offices. And of particular relevance today, I think, is the fact also that we're a Microsoft Gold partner and a member of the BI Product Advisory Board. Okay, so some of you may have joined our Microsoft Roadmap presentation last week. This is one of the slides from that. Today we'll be drilling in and looking at Datazen, and as it's sort of flagged at the top there, it's boxed software. And what we mean by that really is that it's something that you purchase or acquire and install yourselves and manage yourselves, as opposed to software as a service, which is more aligned with Power BI, so a cloud-based solution. So that Datazen itself was acquired by Microsoft in April this year. We'll see the app for Windows and iOS. There's also one for Android. There is enough offline capability, and I'll touch on that and explain what that's about. It's optimised for SQL Server and SSAS, but there are other data connectors, so we're not constrained just to those two. For Enterprise Edition customers with software assurance, you would have access to Datazen essentially free of charge, so with no additional costs, as long as you've got software assurance. So the product itself, what we're looking at here is the Datazen Designer, and we'll look at this in greater detail. You'll see the three mobile devices. Also, there is HTML5, so you can access the dashboards that are built in Datazen and published to the Datazen server through really any of the browsers on any of the devices. And I will go into that very quickly, but we'll stay within the apps pretty much for the rest of the demonstration. In terms of the Datazen product set, there are essentially three components. There's the Datazen server, the publisher, and the native apps, really for Windows, iOS and Android. So what does each component provide? In terms of the data server, it provides a secure managed access to data sources and visualizations. You'll see here there are essentially three components: the core services, data acquisition, and the web appliances. And we'll look at those again just a little bit further down as we go into the product and the presentation. Second component is the publisher app, and it is an app. There is a Windows 7 version, but that's currently in preview, and it's not as functionally complete as the Windows 8 app. So just to keep that in mind, some people may be using the Windows 7 version. It's not as functionally rich as the app. So you use the publisher for authoring dashboards, and then getting those dashboards published up to the server. We'll talk about data connections again as we go further in. The third aspect is really the consuming those particular dashboards, and like I say, that's done through a series of apps or through the browser. Okay. So what I'm going to do is jump straight into the demonstration, because I want to show various component parts of the product set. So I'll start by showing a couple of simple examples of Datazen dashboards via a Windows phone. And the scenario here is that what I'd like to do is extend the dashboards that I'm going to show you with another dashboard. I'm going to show you how we do that and how we link the two. The data is dummy. Obviously, it's all made up, and it's a fictional customer. In this case, it's a bank. So we'll be going onto the Windows phone, then Datazen server, into the Publisher app, and then back on. And I'll finally show the final completed set of dashboards using the iPad. So let me see if we can do this now. This is where technology comes into it. So I'm going to drop onto my phone. So just escape out of that. Hopefully you can see that on my screen. So I'm going to open up the phone session. Yes. Okay, so what you can see there is my Windows phone. And you'll see right in the centre there we've got the, just look at the sunshine. You'll see there right in the centre we've got the Datazen app, and I've got the browser. And if I just click on the browser, just open that up, should be coming through on your screen. Right, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop into Datazen server. Just to show you what that looks like. Waiting for your screen to refresh. There we go. And what I'll do is I'll log in. And what you'll see now is the Datazen server. And what I've got here available to me is a collection of dashboards. And I can select a dashboard and drop in. I've also got the ability to select KPIs, and I've got a series of KPIs there as well. Just wait for that to refresh. There we go. Well, what I want to do is really take you through the app, and the interaction is very similar whether you're through the browser or through the app, but the app does have one or two aspects that are slightly different. Just wait for it to refresh. So I'm going to click on the Datazen app, and see that starting up. And there you go. I've got those three KPIs that we looked at on the browser. I can also look at if I'm just scrolling across here, let's see, refresh, slightly hesitantly, and there's those dashboards again. What I'll do is I'll go through the KPIs by way of demonstration. What we're going to, the KPI we're looking at here is TG Bank KPI, and I've got a CAR ratio there, which is capital adequacy, for those familiar with banking terms. And you'll see if I select that KPI, it brings me into a sort of activity pane where I can comment on the KPI should I wish and share that, have a dialogue with the group. What I'm doing there is I'm clicking on the detail, and underneath the detail I've got the dashboard. So I'm going to click on that dashboard. And what this does is it takes me into Datazen, and it brings the dashboard up. Just slowly but surely. There we go. So you can see 6 KPIs. We've got 6 gauges, and I can interact. I have the ability to select various business areas. So I'm looking at commercial customers, large corporates, globals. You select global there. You'll see the dashboard updates and reflects our selection. Notice I'm looking at the dashboard in portraits, and if I rotate my phone, see how quickly this refreshes on your screen. So if I rotate my phone, you'll see that the dashboard extends. So I've got essentially 2 views of the dashboard. One is this particular view, the master view, which is the landscape, where I've got my 6 KPIs, but I've also got a grid of detail. And on the grid, I've got year-to-date actuals, budget, prior year, full year, and I've got actual versus budget. And I've got my gauges, and I can still obviously select. Let's just select large corporates now. And again, table updates and KPIs update also. So keep that in mind. We've got the opportunity with Datazen to specify how we want the sort of portrait and landscape views to look. I'm just going to go back to portraits. So the other aspect of this particular dashboard is now I can select period end RWAs, risk-weighted assets. What it will do now is it will drill into a further dashboard. So I've got a linked dashboard. And what it's showing me here now is a trend of period end RWAs. And I can select the time period by using the navigator at the top. That's just limiting the time frame. And again, similarly, if I rotate the phone and go to landscape, all being well, you'll see it extend. I've also got this the ability here to scroll and on the time frame at the top. Yeah, I can select particular months as well, so I can do that. This is all part of basic Datazen functionality. Okay, let me rotate that back. Good. So what I'd like to do now is take these particular dashboards and extend that. I'm going to create a new dashboard, and I'm going to link it into these two, and give you a sense of how you might progress with Datazen. Now, before I create a new dashboard, the first thing I want to do is go onto the server. I'm going to create a new data view, and I'll explain the data views in a sec. So here I'm going to click on the Datazen server login. So at this point, I'm logging into the server, and the control panel is essentially how they describe the server set, if you like. I won't go into too much detail here. There's a whole raft of stuff around sort of configuration and setup. One thing I will touch on is the hub. So this notion of the hub, which is all around, again, that's really to do with multi-tenancy, so the ability to have multiple sets of KPIs and dashboards, and again, configure who can see what and who has access to what. What I'm interested in doing here, like I say, is creating a data view. And the way Datazen sort of configures and works with this is that you essentially create a data connection, and you'll see we've got a series of data connections here, primarily data from SQL Server. We've got one here which is analysis services. But you create your data connection. I'll just click in and just show you what the data connection itself looks like. The connection details are masked here, but we are connected to a SQL database. So I just test that connection to make sure it's connecting okay. That's all fine, successful, so happy with that. Once I've got the data connection, I then want to create views underneath that. And this is where we would do that. So I've got one data view already in place, net interest income by customer. And what I'll do is I'll go on and now create a new data view. I'll call this period end RWA analysis. There we go. I should point out that we've got a variety of we've got two ways of connecting. We can either schedule the connection, so you'll see there I can, how often we want to refresh, or I've got real time at the bottom here. Just to keep in mind here, when it's a scheduled data view, only refreshed at a certain point, we've got the ability to allow client data caching. And what that's indicating here is that if a client tool, so a mobile device connects, the data will be downloaded onto the mobile device, or can be done. It doesn't, although we're allowing it at this point, we don't necessarily implement it until we create the dashboard. But at this point, we can allow client data caching, and the data will sit at rest on the client mobile device, and obviously they can work with that offline. Or you can choose real time. If I choose real time, it is what it says. Essentially, it's allowing us to, as we query the dashboard, we're querying the data source. I'm going to now just drop in a SQL query, SQL database. Very simple query, this. Notice there's no query editor at this point. You're going to need to create your SQL and drop it into the pane, or if it's very simple, obviously you can just type it in yourself. Let me just move on to the next view. And what we've got here now is the data view presentation. You see it's very simple, really just a collection of columns. The layout of the data view itself is important, because the way the data, when we go into the publisher and we create our dashboards and we create our charts, the format or the layout, so the columns, column names, these column definitions are an important consideration when we come to create the dashboard. And I'll hopefully be able to point that out as we go to create the dashboard itself. So I'll finish at that point. Good, and there it is, that particular data view. Now I'm going to drop into the publisher product, and so I'm going into the apps. There's my Datazen. I'll just click on that. Make sure you can keep up with me. Okay, once in Datazen, the app, you can see I've got my current work, and I've got those dashboards and KPIs that are up on the server. So the ones that we were looking at earlier today, earlier in the dashboard, there's a time series analysis and KPI dashboard. Yeah. So keep in mind we've got both the server instance, the hub basically, and we've got our local views. What I'm going to do here now is I'm going to create a new dashboard. So I can create it based on an existing view, or I can create one from an empty palette. Just wait for that to come up. There we are. Okay. The list of visuals here on the left-hand side represent the sort of the full list of what we can work with, and it's within. We need to work within this group. So there isn't really any way of extending it within Datazen apart from maps. So you can have custom maps, but essentially these are the visualizations or the objects that we have available to us for dashboarding. Just quickly demonstrate how the product sort of works or configures itself. If I take a gauge, see if we drop it on, it will reformat itself based on the size of the gauge that we're including. Yeah. So the first demo that we looked at, essentially we had a collection of these gauges. Just put that in. There we go. Yeah. So you can see it's reasonably intelligent in how it's going to position objects on the screen and reformat. For the purposes of this demonstration, what I'm going to do is what I want to do. I want to look at RWA, risk-weighted assets, by industry sectors. So that's the extension of the analysis. I want to look at risk-weighted assets by industry sectors. So the first thing I'll do is I'll drop on a category chart. Okay, and I'm going to drop on a total chart here. That's very nice. So we've got a stacked bar and we've got a total chart. On the stacked bar, I do have the opportunity to change the title, so we'll call that period end RWA. I'll just say by business group, and just here we can say industry sectors. Okay. I can choose to add it as a stacked or stacked by side by side, stacked 100%. For the moment, I'll keep it as a stacked bar. I'll show the legends. There we are. And what I'll do is I'll change the orientation so we're looking at it horizontally. Good. I'm happy with that. Let's have a look at the totals chart here. Let's just call it period end RWA by industry sector. Good. And I'm happy with the format and the general layout. Once we've got the charts on, what I need to do now is associate data with those particular charts. If we go now up to the data view at the top here, you'll see that I've got the totals chart selected, and it's based on this simulated data. So what Datazen has done in the back end is it's basically simulated data to allow the chart to be drawn. And the important thing about this simulated data is the format. So in this particular instance, we're using that particular series of data, and I'm looking at those 5 metrics, yeah, on this particular chart. If I took off a couple of those and we run that, you'll see we've now just got the 3 bars. So what I want to do now is replace this with the data view that I've just created. So I select to add data. I've got 2 options. I can either select locally, data locally, or I can select from the Datazen server. Locally, I can only connect to Excel data sets. So there's no other option. I can only connect to Excel data sets. So if I want to connect to a SQL database, I'll need to do that data connection on the Datazen server, create a data view, and then if I now select the Datazen server, there's Contoso, which is the hub that I'm working with at the moment. There's the data connections that we saw earlier on the server, and if I select TG Bank, these are the 2 data views that I've got created against that data connection. I'll select the period end RWA and I'll import that data. There you go. So that's the same table we were looking at earlier when we were on the server. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to replace the simulated data with the period end risk-weighted assets view. So I'm now replacing that table with this, and I want to select all of those industry sectors. And now if I run that, there we are. There's that view, which is very nice. Exactly what I want. Oops, there it is. Yep, that's very nice. Exactly what I want. Now I'm going to go back. Let me do the same to the stacked bar chart. So here I've got changed the data connection, so it's risk-weighted assets again, period end risk-weighted assets. The definition will be by business group. So I'm going to change financial line to business group. And if I select again my drop down on the columns, I'm going to select all 5 columns. Okay, so let's have a look at that. Now I'm going to run the preview at the top here. So we've got a stacked bar, which is giving us period end risk-weighted assets by business group, by industry sector, and then I've got it broken out across business sectors. Good, so I'm getting there. Let's go back to the layout. The only other object I want to use on here is the time navigator, so I'll drop that in, scroll that across. There we are. So the time navigator is there and in place. Again, I need to go back to the data view, and I need to associate a time characteristic with that particular navigator. And the way I do that is, again, change the data set to period end risk-weighted assets, and I'll select all of the columns. Now let's go to run the preview. There we are. That's all looking very colourful, very nice. And again, if I select last year, you'll see the charts will update accordingly, because we're all running off the same data view in this particular instance, so it works in that way. And again, I can look at a particular grouping or bar. Okay. Just go back here. Good, so I'm happy with that as it stands at the moment. There's just a couple of other things I wanted to show at this stage. Let me just change the heading here. So period end RWA September 2015, just for when it was published. And if we just excuse me. So I can change the background. At the moment, it's just the default, but you'll see there's a collection of backdrops here that I can use. So let's just try green. Yep, I'm happy with that. You can brand, so you certainly can brand, but it's quite an involved task, and you need to make sure that that you do it across all of the devices that you're looking to connect to. One last thing I want to show you before I publish this is how we reformat it really for a mobile device. So I can take the sort of mobile view of it, and what I'll do just by way of illustrations, I'll drag total on the top, I'll put the time series in the centre there, and I'll drag the stacked bar to the bottom. There we go, I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do now is save a version of this locally, so I'm just going to save that there. Oops. And then I'm going to publish that up to the server. Sorry, just trying to get there. There we go. Let me just put that into banking demo. Publish. Good. So that's published. Now what I need to do is just quickly link that into my existing dashboard. What I'll do is I'll edit the time series dashboard that we looked at earlier. Oh, this is it here. Let's wait for that to come up. There we go. I'm going to select the time series chart. You'll notice at the bottom here I've got the ability to drill through to target. What I'm going to select here is the dashboard. Custom URL is probably self-evident. You just need you go to a custom URL. You define. You can supply parameters to that, so you can define it so that it takes you to a particular page and a particular location. So here it's saying pick a dashboard. I must be careful to pick the dashboard that's published rather than the one that's on my local machine, because that wouldn't work. So I select the published dashboard. And what I'm going to just do here is I'm going to tie in the two time navigators, so that when navigate from one dashboard to the other, it will carry through the time navigation. Okay, and that's all I've done there. Let me just apply that. Good. All right. So what I'll do here now is I'll just quickly publish this up. Server. Let's just publish that up. Good. And that's published. So what does that look like now on the iPad? What I'm going to do is drop back onto my desktop. Now what I'm going to try and do here is share the iPad. Okay, so we should see, there we go. You see I've got the Datazen app on the iPhone, on the iPad. Just click on that and we go into Datazen. Notice I've got far more KPIs here, and the reason for that is I'm actually looking across not only the Thorogood Datazen server, but also the Datazen demo server. I'll just show you that. So I've just clicked on the data servers, give it time to catch up. There we go. So I'm now connected to two servers, Datazen demos and the TG in this particular app. Let's go back to the dashboards, and this is the full selection of dashboards. So we've got the Datazen set there as well, and then these are our dashboards. So these are the ones that I've been playing with. What I'm going to do is go into the TG Bank dashboard, TG Bank KPI dashboard. Just let that come back up. Refresh. There we are. Okay, you've got it. So very familiar now. This is the view that we were looking at earlier. I'm loath to do anything here. It's just taking time now to refresh. Let me rotate that so we can see it. Portrait. So I'm waiting for it to come through. There we go. And what I'll do is I'll just select the period end as we had before. And that takes me through to our trend chart. Good. And again, I can select last 6 months or last year. Now what I should be able to do, all being well, is I'm sure I did publish. So if we come back to our dashboards, there's the dashboard as published. Give it a sec to catch up. I'm not sure what happened. Okay, that's the published dashboard. If I rotate that, let's see if we get that coming up. I'm not sure if this is to do with caching of views, but just to demonstrate. So when I go to portrait, you can see that the time selection, the time navigator there is in the center rather than at the top, as we had with the master view. I do apologize, I'm not quite sure what's happening now. Why that hasn't worked. Okay, conscious of time. But this, yeah, essentially that's the sort of the extent of the demo. Again, the phone is still there, and I won't try. But there's the phone. So I've got the two of them still up and running, and I'm not sure whether on the phone it would take me through either. It's just quickly. I think I'll probably need to move on. Could be a caching issue here, actually. Okay, oops. There we go. So that's taking me through to the. I'm not quite sure why it didn't work on the iPad. And that's just taking me through to the. And if I rotate again, you can see the landscape and the portrait view of the dashboards. Good. Okay, let's drop back into our presentation. Just take this one off. Okay, so sorry, a bit of a whirlwind and quite a lot open and quite a lot happening, but relatively straightforward and simple to put together. I think hopefully you have gathered that. Let's move through. So in terms of data connections, although it's very strong against the Microsoft set, this is the full set, so it's not wider than this. I know some other products can have a very large list of data connectors, but with Datazen, this is currently the list. So the generic ODBC allows us to go to a number of other data type connections, another set of databases. If we, just to re-emphasize again, we set up a data connection, we set up a group of data views, and those data views are then used by the publisher. Yeah? So you just need to keep that in mind when you're developing your dashboards. Also keep in mind, of course, the format and the layout of the data view is important, because it is that will help support the sort of visuals that you want to display. Okay, just scrolling on. In terms of the enterprise architecture, this is essentially just an extended view of the first presentation, the first view that we saw of the architecture and the layout. Essentially, there are a group of components around the Datazen server. So there's Datazen core, and then you've got some web apps. This is one type of configuration. It's very flexible how you do this and how you scale out. So obviously, these objects you can put on multiple servers. And again, include maybe the web apps in the DMZ and the data core outside of it. But how you configure it is there are plenty of options. So just to sort of run through very quickly in terms of the Datazen components, we've got the publisher, the server, and the apps. In terms of the server components, those can be distributed across multiple servers and scaled out to support larger implementations. In terms of data connections, they can be real-time or scheduled. And remember, with scheduled, you can have also offline caching. In terms of security, Datazen can use Active Directory, ADFS. It has its own core service repository as well. All data at rest, whether it's sitting on the Datazen server or sitting on a mobile device, is encrypted. So there's that level of security also included. And as I was saying, client-side caching allows for offline sort of dashboard viewing. Okay, and then just key points to sort of start to round up. I'll go to the second one really more so. Datazen and Power BI are unlikely to be brought together in the short term, but it may be a possibility in the longer term. But Datazen is really positioned for sort of more on-premise, and Power BI will be software as a service, so if you keep that in mind. Again, the other key consideration is Datazen is effectively free for customers running SQL Server Enterprise Edition with software assurance. Okay. I appreciate we've run over it a bit, but hopefully you've been able to get a sense of what Datazen is, I suppose, and how you go about starting to deliver a solution using the product. I haven't gone into how Datazen is positioned against the likes of Power BI. I mean, we touched on it just briefly there, but there's other functionality. So things like Tableau or Click. Suffice to say, I suppose, that those products look to hit slightly different sweet spots. The thing about Datazen, it is a consumer product in terms of how you interact with it. So there's no real ad hoc analysis or self-service. It's very much more how it's delivered and presented. But with Datazen, you get a strong, I think, compelling mobile delivery very, very quickly. But you need to design and work within the bounds of what the product does. But what it does, I think it does very well. So thank you. We have run out of time. But if you've got any questions, please raise them. We'll do our best to get back and answer those as fully as we can. Thank you for your time this afternoon. And that's it. We're finished. Thank you, guys.